being joined on today's edition of Creator and Conversation by the living legend Elliot S. Maggin. I was just saying before we began the recording, I have the utmost appreciation for your body of work, all of your novels that you've written. So I
Thank you.
suppose just to begin, I wanted to begin. I know when you do like shows and podcasts like this, everyone must jump straight onto Superman, Green Arrow, but I wanted to pick up on Not My Closet, which I totally enjoyed when I was reading. Like I was curious. I think I heard you on a mutual friend John Sutchers's podcast. I might have seen you mention that you could have like an autobiography in the near future. Or you might be working on some biographical material. But I was wondering, with Not My Closet, there were some characters within the story that I was like, particularly when you were speaking or writing towards like the comic scene in the 70s and the 80s, I felt that were there actual colleagues of yours you had in mind when you were writing the story? Were these like perhaps loosely based on true events?
Yeah, I mean, it's a romantic laugh. It's about half true. I can't tell you which half because,
Exactly.
I guess that's against the rules, but yeah, it's about half true. And the people I refer to, yeah, there are analogies. There are a lot of analogies.
And what drove you to write that piece of work then? Considering that a lot of your prior novels would have been in the vein of fiction and sometimes adapting. You really developed the licensed IP novelization format, going back with Last Son of Krypton. But
Yeah.
Not My Closet was such it was kind of somewhat in that vein,
It was a
particularly with
departure.
Goldenrod. Sorry.
Yeah. It was a
Yeah.
departure. It's the only book I've written that didn't involve people flying and, lifting things their own power. But uh yeah, I mean it was pretty much therapy.
No, no, it's good.
Um which is I guess what novels are. But yeah, it was longer term and cheaper than a shrink. So I wrote it, yeah.
No, it's a powerful piece.
Looking forward.
Totally, I totally
Right?
enjoyed it. Powerful, very powerful piece. Really enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed the concepts of just towards the end. You had the whole. Oh, sorry, I might be mixing up now with An Enemy's Gift, but the Goldenrod character as well, that you developed within it
Yeah.
as the working. Like, it's just something like that. Is this great? And to skip over to another piece, which lends more into the towards the more recognizable characters, such as Superman and such, An Enemy's Gift. That was, I really, really enjoyed that because when I read your work, I often find with regards to the characters, when you write a character, I can tell when it's Elliot Maggin writing the character, not, but like it's still
Yeah.
a multifaceted character. It's the character behaves like if it's Lex Luthor, it says Lex Luthor should be, Clark Kent is Clark Kent. But I, I,
Yeah.
I see Tom Brevoort, the senior editor at Marvel, he mentions you have such a rapport with your characters. And to me, it's like a form of poetry. There's a lyrical, almost lyrical-esque element to how you manage these characters within their worlds. And that's a come within the collection of short stories in Enemy's Gift. You actually had some poetry, some reflections and
Yeah.
meditations within it as well.
Yeah.
That was great. Have you any plans to maybe do um, a standalone collection of poetry, or is that something that you delve much into?
That's something I do when the fancy strikes. I mean, I
Hmm.
lately I think all of the poems I put in An Enemy's Gift are in the same format. They're all sonnets.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember when I was in grad school, I had a professor who accused me of thinking in terms of structure rather than content. Um, and this was journalism school, so
Hmm.
content was more important then in that context. But um, it's a good thing for a fiction writer to think in terms of structure, I think. Um, so it imposes a discipline. As far as I don't I haven't written enough poetry to throw in a book. I've got a friend who's a real poet. She's just amazing, and she has these two boxes of poems sitting in a closet. Um,
Oh, wow.
and she refuses to publish them. I mean, I offered to publish them myself, but no, she's a real poet. She sits and works hard on poetry pretty much all day. Anytime she's got a spare moment, she sits and writes a poem. She must have thousands of them. So
Wow.
I said, they don't belong to you. They belong to the universe. Um, she says, okay. And she told me where they are and what I can do with them if she predeceases me, which is not likely. She's 15 years younger. But um, no, I'm not a poet so much as, you know, I'm just a guy that comes up with nonsense. Yeah.
It's
Um,
it is art though.
Neruda wrote a book of poetry. It's got like 9 poems in it, a total of 9 poems, and he made it into a book. But I don't think I've got that moral weight.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
can
I
make
suppose.
stuff up.
Even going back to Last Son of Krypton, even with the Sonnabend, those and Toby, that there's poetry and
Yeah.
element of rhyming into it as well. So it's maybe that's what has it embedded within my mind when I associate it. But it's great. And did you study much in the way of the classics like Greek mythology or such when you were in school yourself? Because I just find particularly when you're portraying the story. You often when people think of Superman, the triangle they think of is the one of romance between Clark Kent, Superman, Lois Lane. But you
Yeah.
really delved into the other triangle as well, which was the friendship, the lost friendship between Clark Kent, Superboy, Lex Luthor, and there's something
Yeah.
so very touching about that as well. But I find it's so evocative, particularly further in your comic book work as well, around the Superman legend. It kind of were you keeping in mind anything of the classics when you wrote this, or is this purely this is what makes the good story and it just drove the characters in the direction you needed it to go?
Well, it's kind of both of those. I mean, the reason classical mythology is repetitive in cultures that really didn't have any context is because humans are programmed to receive information in a certain way, in a certain structure again, but in recurring themes.
Hmm.
Every major culture for thousands of years that we know of, and probably longer than that, has had a Superman character.
Hmm.
Um, everyone has had a Wonder Woman character. Everyone has had a Doctor Strange character, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
It's a recurring element against the backdrop of a recurring structure. Um, Humans get information in kind of a tripartite way. Um, the universe is made of fractals. If you
Yeah.
everything is 3 rays of a triangle leaning on each other, like a geodesic dome. Um, I think that occurs in information as well as it occurs in what we perceive as a physical world. Um, so every intellectual interaction, is composed of a decision, a conflict, and a resolution, a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis, uh, a subject, a verb, and an object. Everything is in 3 parts. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Um, Geez, I'm going off again.
No,
I
no,
I, I digress.
no, no,
I
this
digress
is
a lot.
This is no, this is great because you mentioned about just even the touchdown points with regards to different cultures. I teach a module called interactive storytelling, and we first of all, well, like before you can get to the interactive bit, we need to like what is storytelling, and what does come up quite a bit is Joseph Campbell and the monomyth, the hero's journey.
Sure.
And what's so curious about Joseph Campbell is A lot of anthropologists, comparative mythologists, they hate him because they're like, he's open up to generalization. He's like, yeah, what he says has perhaps some grounding, but the interpretation of the myths he's looking at could be watered down from different interpretations. But the reason we still look at it from in a storytelling class is because we're not comparative mythologists. We're like, but the beats, the hero's journey, those beats make for damn good storytelling, and that's where George
Yeah,
Lucas, that's what he built Star Wars on, and that's the reason why we know Campbell is because the media just went, didn't see Star Wars happening. They go to Lucas and said, "Where's your inspiration?" Everyone went. He goes, "Joseph Campbell." The media just, much
right.
to the chagrin of others in academia, they just clung to him. But the structure, though,
I, people should understand that. People
yeah,
should understand that notion of structure, and they don't teach it in schools. I mean, it took me till I was 40 to realize that was what I was doing. You know, I'd look back on all the comic stories I wrote, and the ones that worked the best were the ones that clearly fell into the the Campbell pattern,
yeah,
the
and
Lucas pattern.
and when you were just with regards to your body of work in comics as well, you collaborated quite a bit with Mr. Carrie Bates, and just
Yeah.
did that structure help you guys then? Like, what was the nature of the collaboration? Would you have both sat in the room together to write, or did you do it through correspondence, dictation?
Well, he
Um,
lived next door to me for a long time.
oh, well, that was handy.
Um, yeah. So we went out and got these little tape recorders. I don't know where mine is. I wouldn't be surprised if he still had his. These clunky 1970s tape recorders, um, and cassettes, and and he would dictate pages worth of visual instructions into it,
Mhm.
um, and I just transcribe and throw in the dialogue. So he was the one that was doing the plotting. I mean, we'd
Okay.
plot verbally with each other, but he was the one that pulled it together in terms of how everything fit, and he's really good at that.
Yeah.
Um, and theoretically, I can write dialogue. He can write dialogue too, but I don't know. I I I I developed a reputation for having wit. It's just silly, but that's how we divided the work. You know, he did the plotting, and the story structure, and I filled in the blanks.
Oh, brilliant. And
It
was
was
that
almost Marvel style, except there was no artwork involved.
and how was it received then with regards to the artists? You collaborated quite a bit with absolute legends like Kurt Swan, for example.
Yeah,
But with if they had a note, would they go to the editor or would they go back to you or Carrie?
they always went to the editor.
Okay.
Um, in Kurt's case, we didn't get along for 15 years,
Oh.
uh, because okay, there's this book, um, Management by Peter Fuller, I think,
Hmm.
which was the corporate Bible at the time in the 70s and 80s, and it was nonsense. It was a my my cousin Alice is like my best buddy. She used to manage the World Trade Center. She was the manager of the two buildings of Port Authority, and she would refer to this book constantly. And she said, yeah, this is the way people do business. If you don't want to do business this way, you better read it anyway because that's what all your competitors are doing. Um, what he basically said was when you have people reporting to you, you have to divide and conquer. You have to keep them at odds with each other. It was almost Sun Tzu, it was
Mm.
almost like you're waging war. Um, so when when we put when we started to put computers in at DC, um, Paul decided that there'd be three computer systems. There'd be one in editorial and one for freelancers and one for marketing. Marketing had Wang and freelancers all used Apples, and the editors, to whatever extent they used anything, they used PCs, um, which weren't internally compatible at the time. And that was because Peter Fuller told Paul to do that, you know. So Julie used to take that to heart. Julie Schwartz, my editor, um, he didn't want to take the blame for anything. So when Kurt would complain about something, he'd say, "Oh, Elliot did that," or Carrie did that. And Kurt and Carrie were great buddies, but it took me a long time to make friends with Kurt. Um, and the reason was Julie had us fighting each other all the time, remotely. We'd hardly speak, we'd hardly see each other. But when we did, we were like arm's length all the time until about 1985, when we made friends one day. I really liked Kurt, but I didn't until I'd known him for 15 years.
It's
That's the way things were managed then. I don't think they do that anymore. I think people like to work together.
yeah,
We're in a post-warfare ethos among humanity. That's why the current notion of using tariffs as a weapon and trying to divide the world among three major powers rather than an interactive system isn't working, because humanity's evolved beyond that. War in general is a nonsense idea in an interdependent world. So management has gotten that way. Business has gotten that way. Certainly editorial businesses, creative businesses. Is that making any sense?
no, it does
I'm
absolutely.
rambling.
And no, no.
I'm digressing again.
But it is actually very interesting, the points you bring up, because the way Julius would have played you and Cora off against each other, much more difficult, if impossible, today with social media and such. People are so much more connected now. It would have been an
Yeah,
instant DM. You guys would have cut you, Julie, quicker than anything. But your application on a global scale, that now is brilliant insight, because obviously we, the citizens of the world, haven't the same we're not privileged to the same information as the world powers and how they make their decisions. So we are cut out that loop. And then if they decide to play us off through the tariff system, of course, that makes plenty of sense. Three powers using the tariff system. That's a really articulate way of putting the current crisis that we all seem to be trying to grapple with at the moment. And that's what good art does, and writers, is they write from the times, from the world that we're in. And
yeah,
I suppose another piece of collaboration in your prose work that stood out to me was the Generation X novel that you did with Scott Lobdell. That
yeah,
was interesting to read as well, because I think it was just at that sweet spot where online shopping, the internet was kind of just emerging, not as prevalent as it was today. How is the
yeah. Late
collaboration?
90s. Yeah.
Yeah, how's the
Uh,
collaboration with Scott? Was that similar to how you would have worked with Carrie, or was it a different mix-up in how you
no, it was different. I mean, um, most of our collaboration was on the phone.
Mhm.
Um, and what he was mostly concerned with was that I was consistent with his notion of Generation X, of the characters he created, and the interaction there. I created a couple of characters that were new,
Mhm.
um, that were in that story, and when we put the comic book adaptation together, and it was long after we had done the book. What he insisted on was that I get rid of everything that he hadn't created,
Ah, okay.
which was fine with me. It was, it worked out. It worked out perfectly well.
Yeah.
But he was a lot of fun to hang out with. He was more fun to hang out with than he was to work with, I think. Uh,
Do you
but
guys keep in touch
the
still?
I'm sorry,
I was just going to say, do you guys still keep in touch? Do you pass at conventions? No?
haven't spoken to him in years.
Okay.
Um, You know, maybe my closest friend in comics during that time was Al Milgrom.
Okay.
Um, we roomed together. We were buddies. We had an apartment. We used to throw big parties.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I saw him at a convention maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
you fall out of touch with people, and I regret it. I mean, I'm 74 now, for heaven's sakes. I need more people in my life. I have a rule. I have a rule. I have to have two social interactions in the course of a day. I live in this house by myself and with a dog and a pool, and which is a perfectly reasonable way to live, except there aren't other people. So I make a point of seeing my grandkids and my ex-wife even, and um, I write. I have a friend, Dan Brand, who's a writer. You probably know his brother David.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Dan edited all of David's books earlier in his career, um, and he's writing a book on American history now. So we get on the phone like this,
Yeah.
and we sit and for hours on Thursdays and Fridays. We sit and we write. And we call it our accountability partnership. He writes one thing, I write another thing, but we make sure we write. That's a social interaction.
Yeah.
Because for most of my life, I just sat in a room and made stuff up. Oh, I still sit in a room and make stuff up, but now I got Dan looking over my shoulder saying, "Oh, I see you're writing now. Oh, that's good." So I write compulsively.
No, absolutely, and it's so important as well, particularly everything what happened with COVID. It's so easy for folks just to become more withdrawn. Like I'm a teacher myself, so I've
What do
seen
you
it.
teach?
We teach animation, games, and brand
Okay.
and marketing. So I kind of teach. Mainly, it comes down to storytelling, which is storytelling helps us to teach the animation, games, helps teach the business students because it's brand and marketing. So I always take a narrative approach in everything that I do. It's like, what is the story you're trying to tell through what channel? Know your audience, know your market, but more importantly, how do you convey what it is you want to convey? And particularly with animation and comics, we focus on how can we show, not tell. So the visuals break down your ideas into how we communicate that. A little bit of semiotics thrown in there sometimes.
Okay.
Um, but it's amazing the students before COVID, everyone was like the idea of a Zoom call online be something that's completely alien to us. But literally, the
Sure.
day our country went into lockdown, we all figured out how to work Zoom. We all went online. Um, there was a period where people adapted, but then afterwards, you could see it in the students when they came back to campus. Um, really, the social interaction had changed. They had become that much more withdrawn. It's as everyone had to relearn, myself included, how to be around
Yeah.
people, how to
Well,
interact.
you had a generation growing up without contact for a couple of years.
Yep, exactly, and
Uh,
this is it. It's like the worst bit of the sci-fi futures we predicted came true. But thankfully, we seem to have pivoted now that we've a firmer grasp on technology. So the fact that we're having this conversation right now is showing like some of the benefits that we were able to draw from the adaptation to that software and technology. Like it's much more
yeah,
accessible. Grandparents seeing their grandchildren around the globe more instantaneous. That side of things has been a positive attribute to see. And
yeah. We had a during the pandemic, we had a group of 9 family members. We would just get on Zoom
mm,
once a week on Thursdays, for heaven's sakes. It kickstarted that whole forced interaction thing
mhm.
that PCs made possible. It's cool. I mean, Zoom wouldn't be Zoom if we hadn't gone through that, I suspect.
Yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. I
so
think Skype, remember Skype? That was a thing. It's disappeared
yeah,
now, I
yeah,
think. Yeah. Oh, goodness. And I suppose with regards, so a lot of what we've spoken about so far has been your work and prose within comics. But you've also written for other mediums. In particular, I'm thinking off the moment is animation. You wrote one of my favorite Batman the Animated Series episodes, The
Oh
Cape and
yeah,
Conspiracy. That was I didn't realize that was a comic. That
yeah,
particular
it
episode
was.
was a comic adaptation going in, but it was so good. It worked so well for the medium because particularly the twist and reveal at the end of the story, the animators had a lot of fun. How was that working on? Did you have any interaction with the producers on the show, or was it just more a
Yeah.
script was sent in? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, Marty Pasco and I essentially collaborated on how to adapt this story to the new medium, and I hadn't written any animation until I did that Batman story.
Mhm.
Um, when it was adapted from my first Batman story for the comics,
Yeah,
and what I decided about Batman was that every every Batman story has to be very carefully plotted, more so than other characters in comics. So whenever I wrote a Batman story, I got together with Carrie in the middle of the night, Carrie Bates,
hmm,
um, drank coffee until 2 in the morning, just working out the plot. And I did that with Cape and Cowl. So yeah, I worked closely with Marty Pasco on turning that into something different. I think it was the only Batman story, at least in that first season, that didn't have a villain of the week. You
true.
know, it was a guy I made up. Um,
Yeah.
Wormwood was the character, and I got some negative feedback from it because of that. I mean, it didn't look like the other Batman stories.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
It
but
actually it holds up among some of the best episodes because it's so self-contained, and you also have, I believe, I could be misremembering, but I think John Rhys Davies, who's better known now as Gimli from Lord of the Rings or Salah from Indiana Jones. He also voiced the corrupt ambassador within the episode as well.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like even that is noteworthy onto it, the casting of it. But yeah, it's what you mentioned there, that negative feedback. That's something I think that comics and TV, but more so comics in general, suffer with is they want everything to be. It must tie in with this. It must promote this product or tie. It must be this. And then, the
yeah.
sacrifice in a good story are they're diluting the effect of the story. But that episode, like the fact it stays with me now, um, it's like it's because of the way it was. It's the self-contained nature that makes it stand out as well, you know. But I suppose that's a
Well,
time when
thanks.
no, it's
I
truly
would say too.
it's it's um it's I suppose it's what is it? It's the toy companies back then had more of a say within those type of shows, wasn't it back then? It
The
was
who?
the action figure companies. They would have like
Oh yeah,
lunch boxes. Yeah, they
yeah,
would have wanted how many if how many
yeah.
Batmobiles they can sell off something. Um,
Right.
and
The kids still buy
you've
lunch
written
boxes.
sorry, go ahead.
Do kids still buy lunch boxes? I don't know. I remember I had a new lunchbox every year with a new character on it, but I
I
don't know if they
think
still do that.
I no, I think they do. I have a nephew who's 6 and he has his lunchbox and his backpack and everything now. If anything, it's more
Yeah.
accessories added onto them. Um, and you've also written. So what's curious is you've so with regards to Superman, you've known for writing for comics and for prose novels. But you originally had the idea for a Superman movie, for what before even the Christopher Reeve and Richard Donner in '78
Yeah.
came out, and you also wrote a
Yeah.
treatment for Lois and Clark. So you have written a live action script as well for
Yeah.
Lois and Clark, which unfortunately wasn't adapted. But again, that was circulated by some of the Superman fan
Geez,
sites.
I love that script.
Yeah.
it's sitting in an old computer. I think I have 5 computers in the bookshelf over there that are full of spec scripts I wrote.
Oh man,
I wrote a story for Lois and Clark that I really liked.
yeah,
Um,
Ghost of Superman
yeah.
Future, wasn't it?
No, it was geez. It was the one. The story was that Superman endorsed a candidate for mayor in
Yep.
Metropolis who got elected.
Yep.
Um, but there was this character, this woman who started buying up billboards around Metropolis that said, Superman for mayor, and remember when our heroes used to be in charge of our lives, whatever.
Yep.
Remember when the presidents used to be heroes, and then they flash on Eisenhower and on JFK, and
Yep.
so she put together this really effective campaign to elect Superman mayor of Metropolis in a write-in vote, which he just wasn't interested in at all. So he endorsed a third-party candidate who then won immediately because he'd gone on television and said, "Yeah, this is the one who should be mayor." It was a good story. I liked it.
It really was.
Turn,
It was so good because you also, the candidate he endorsed, you found a brilliant way to connect her to Perry White, where it was played by the late Lane Smith in the show. And the ending to it, that reveal, that little twist at the end was
you
perfect
like
because
that?
yeah,
We
that
can
that was
say
a,
that because it's not out there. I mean, it's not a spoiler because I'm not spoiling anything, but
yeah,
turns out the woman who's elected mayor, you find out in the last scene, was an old girlfriend of Perry's.
yep,
Um, at some point he says, yeah, he's talking to Lois about her relationship with Superman and how she can't understand it and she doesn't know what to do with this big deal hero. And he says, "Well, I was going out with this girl a long time ago. She was like larger than life. She was like determined to do everything." And Lois says, "Whatever happened to her?" And he says, "Well, she was just elected mayor of Metropolis,"
it's
which was very cool.
it was so good because the structure you mentioned earlier on, that's really come into play here because it's Perry who recommended that Clark go to the shelter that she runs, and that put Clark, unknown to Perry Superman, on track to meet her, and then
Yeah.
just so that's it. So like
You and I are probably the only people listening to this thing that know that story.
I know, don't worry. There's actually the reason I'd be confident more now is because when I grew up in a household that didn't have the internet until much later, and
Okay.
when I was just finishing up school, I was introduced to more internet classes. So I actually had to surf the internet. This is before smartphones and stuff. And the first thing, being the comic book nerd I am, the first thing I typed in was The Last Son of Krypton. And at the time, the book was out of print, but fan websites, I think it was like Superman.nu, had serialized it, and they had also put up the spec script I mentioned and other interviews with you. And that's how I got to know all
Yeah.
about you as well. And then years later, I was able to find the books, particularly when you republished them. Um, and it was just obviously I didn't realize Last Son of Krypton because I just knew the expression from the comics, but that led me to the novel. And the novel fascinates me because that was so, and correct
Excuse
me
me.
if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but did that novel begin life as originally a treatment to possibly become the Superman movie, a Superman movie? Because
Yeah.
you had pitched the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the
It was a
concept behind
memo. It was a long memo I wrote
it.
to Carmine Infantino, who was the publisher then. Um,
Oh, bless you.
I'm sorry.
No, no,
I,
bless you.
I
No.
got something caught in my throat. You got to edit that out for heaven's sakes.
No.
Um, yeah, I wrote this memo to Carmine suggesting that the time for heroes has returned. It was like 1974, I guess. Um, and I started citing all these sociological treatises that I'd read in college. Um, The Pursuit of Loneliness by Philip Slater, that was a big one. Um, but I used that to make the case that it's time for a Superman movie. And here's the Superman movie. And I basically threw in the plot to Last Son of Krypton.
Yeah.
Um, and next thing I knew, first Alfred Bester was in the office, um, whom I had met on the phone, but I'd never, met him in person. I was thrilled, Alfred Bester. Like, he wrote Green Lantern's Oath, for heaven's sakes. He wrote The Star's My Destination. He was great. I once walked into Julie's office. I was in the middle of a book of short stories of Bester's. And I walked into Julie's office all all hyped up on coffee, and I was reading this book. And I said, Julie, do you ever hear of a guy named Alfred Bester? And Julie like flipped out. He called people in from the hall to ask me to repeat my question to them, because Alfred Bester had apparently gotten Julie a job at DC. Um, so they pulled in Alfred Bester to write a Superman screenplay, and his version fell through. So one day I came in a few months later, and I saw Nelson Bridwell sitting on the floor in the archive room, where all the old comics going back to 1936 were, um, and he's sitting with Mario Puzo. So if I
What a
was delighted
pairing.
to meet Alfred, yeah. So if I was thrilled to meet Alfie Bester, Mario Puzo was like, first question I had for him was, so how do you how do you get to be a big deal screenwriter? And Puzo said, well, you write a best-selling novel and they call you. That's the only way to do it. But Carrie and I spent 2 days with Puzo, smoking Cuban cigars in the conference room, talking about Superman. And he went off and wrote his screenplay, and I went off and wrote a novelization of the treatment I had written. And I was done with the book maybe a year before Puzo actually handed in his screenplay.
Mhm.
So they weren't related at all. They had nothing to do with each other, other than the fact that Puzo used a couple of the ideas that we'd thrown out to illustrate points of who Superman was, um, in his screenplay. But at some point, maybe after we'd been talking to him for a day and a half, he looks up at us and he says, "Heaven's sakes, this is a Greek tragedy. I understand this." And I said, "Well, that's what we've been trying to tell you. This is a classic Greek character, Roman too, Norse too, German, Chinese. All of these cultures have this guy in it." And he caught it before it occurred to us to tell him specifically that. He said, "Oh yeah, this fits into um, old classical mythologies." I said, "Yeah, exactly. Write the story," and he did. He did.
No, it's
So
I
he understood. He got it.
it always tickles me when I realize the guy behind The Godfather, worked on like this great piece, like the all-American film, really, and then also directed by the guy who gave us The Omen as well. It never has the definition of range. But what's also stunning is the influence, as you mentioned, he was in the archive where Bridwell, they were looking at stories and tales, they were reading the comics you and Carrie had worked on. So your DNA, your influence on what would have steered them towards the film is there. There's even times when Christopher Reeve, he took his research into the role very seriously, that he also went to DC, to the archive
Yeah,
room.
yeah, he did.
Did you get a chance to meet him and one of his
Never met
creations?
him.
Never met him.
Carrie
No.
met him. I wasn't around any of the days he showed up. He just kind of turned up.
Yeah. He,
Um,
but
and he understood mythological norms too. Um,
mhm.
he was a very well educated guy in a classical sense.
Yeah. He
When
took.
when he told his dad he got the role of Superman, his dad thought he was thrilled because he thought he was doing George Bernard Shaw. uh, he
I,
had explained, no, 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 not that one, this one. Um, yeah,
but yeah,
whatever.
but the legacy onto it is within your work, because Last Son of Krypton, huge success commercially. Mr. Puzo kind of was almost the story behind it was thinking perhaps it was too. He seemed to be of the opinion that you weren't adapting the original treatment that you had produced, but were influenced by his script. But the paperwork proved the dates proved them incorrect on that one.
Yeah, I predated him by at least a year. So I got this phone call. I was living in New Hampshire, and I got this phone call from Saul Harrison, who was the new president of DC at the time. He said, what was his name? The producer of the Superman movies, the first two.
Ilya Salkind.
Salkin, not Ilya, Alexander, his
Oh,
father.
Alexander. Okay.
Um, he calls up and says, Alexander Salkin wants to sue your ass. And I said, why? He says, because he thinks you stole ideas from the book, for the book from the movies. So I told him what drawers to look in and what files to look in, and to show that I handed in the book before anybody saw the first notion of the movie. And Saul called back the next day and says, Salkin says, just kidding. So that never happened. Would have been amusing.
Yeah, yeah.
It would have been an interesting lawsuit.
You could have.
I called
You could
up my agent. I called up my agent and I asked her, should I sue Salkind? She says, not if you want to write a Superman movie. So I didn't. It was bad advice. Puzo had said, you don't get paid unless you sue for it.
There you go.
He says, you got to go to court to get your paycheck. So, so she gave me bad advice. Don't sue Salkind. I should have sued Salkind. Well, maybe not. Ilya seems to be like a nice guy, but
you had the moral victory.
Yeah, that
in
was
this
fun.
one.
Huh?
You had the
I'm sorry?
moral. You had the moral victory in being right.
Yeah. I always have the high ground, and nothing to show for it. What the hell?
And then Last Son brought the sequel, Miracle Monday, which is held in such high regard. Again, it was timed with the release of Superman 2. Again, nothing to do with the film. But that novel to many stands out as like the definitive Superman story. Full stop. That's it. The concept, in essence, is taking the infinite good of Superman and basically pitting it against the devil himself. It's
Yeah.
it's a really powerful story to read. It's and just what was if Last Son was your treatment idea, developing a treatment idea for a possible movie. Where did the concept then from Miracle Monday originate then? Was this something that was stirring as a knock-on effect, as a follow-up? Did you always have it, or did something else inspire you that led you down the path to Miracle Monday?
Yeah, well, my first thought was he met God in the first book. He should meet the devil in the second one.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
And how do you beat the devil? You beat him his own game, which is what he did. The devil and Daniel Webster. You remember? You ever read that story?
Yeah. Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Okay. At the end of that, Webster trounces the devil in court, and although they didn't agree to it before, when you beat the devil, you can get him to do whatever you want, according to Benet. So I took that idea too, and Superman bests the devil in a moral sense. So he gets to dictate to him how to fix things, and that was where that idea came from, I think.
Yeah, no, it's what's amazing is the study of Clark Kent and Superman, which it's always been prevalent within your work. The Who Took the Super out of Superman really gave more agency to Clark Kent than he ever had, for the previous decades. Because obviously he was meek and mild mannered,
Yeah.
but in that story you really got to see, well, who is Clark. And I'm convinced that the Kill Bill treatment that Quentin Tarantino, the speech he gave, I'm like, there's elements there where I'm like, this guy is he definitely must have been reading
Oh yeah.
Human Carry, like
Yeah,
whatever.
he was paying attention.
Yeah, he was definitely there.
And I think he was right. I think he was right. I think what's his name? The director.
Tarantino.
Tarantino. Yeah, he had it right. Superman is Superman.
Yep.
In his memory, Clark came first. So, people these days think seem to think Clark is the real character and Superman's a construct. I think it's the opposite.
Yeah.
I think Tarantino was right. And he explains it very well.
Yeah. It's
Kill Bill 2.
that's the one. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it. Yeah. No, it just stands up because the idea of the way like Clark is, um, he's like this construct that Superman's made. Like he's made sure that I think the level of detail that you gave him was he would record adverts he found funny and show to people. But that's
Yeah.
something that Superman created for Clark to give
Yeah. He
Clark
gave
more.
him a hobby.
Yeah,
Like, okay, what could Clark's hobby be? What could he do with his spare time when I'm busy being Superman? Well, he made something up. He made up this whole thing about recording recording commercials he liked.
exactly.
I
It's
call my grandson Boo Boo because my favorite commercial from the around the time he was born was there was this old man in a nursing home who it was a commercial for Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce. And this old man is walking through the nursing home. He puts on his suit and his hat with a feather in it, and he nods to everybody and quietly leaves the building and meets this guy in his 20s in a car. And he says to him, "Hi, boo boo." And the kid says, "Hi, Grandpa." And they drive off to Vegas. That was my favorite commercial. So,
so
oh, geez.
so that's the that's you borrowing one of your your influences to and
Yeah,
give to Clark, is it?
yeah. But I call my grandson Boo Boo, and I'm not sure he knows why.
he might he might listen to this episode and discover its origins
Mm,
now.
yeah, keep it up for a while. He's only 6. I don't think he'll last this long. But
Oh,
yeah,
uh, and also we're in between. So with the novel Last Son of Krypton, Miracle Monday, also in your books, The Einstein Connection, of course, you have given pre-crisis before the John Bourne reboot. You gave so much depth to the character of Lex Luthor, which often he'd be written as, you know, the villain. He had to be the foil to Superman. And sometimes in modern cinema, in modern storytelling, I do think there's something to be said where you just have a villain for a villain's sake. There
hmm
could be an element. But with what you developed with Lex, you went back to the Silver Age origin and you made it so much more than just a kid who loses his hair and is angry at Superboy. You showed the depth of the relationship, but also the complexity of Lex. Lex Luthor as a character of if Superman hadn't arrived at that rocket hadn't landed, he would have been, you know, the one
he
guide
would
to the
have
next
been
generation.
Leonardo. He would have
Yeah,
been Gautama. He would have been something great.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah, I identify with Lex. Lex is my favorite character in that series. Um,
yeah. The,
I I I you know I people ask me what I would have done with Superman if I'd stayed with it. And I would have spent a lot of time recreating Lex,
Mhm,
which is what John and Marv did
mhm.
in their reboot. But they used LexCorp, which is something I made up. Uh,
Yep.
and the idea was, as time went on, he was going to become this captain of industry. He was going to evolve uh, from from having been a supervillain. Um, uh, and uh, and they just bumped that right in. Um, and that's what I did with LexCorp, with the novel LexCorp.
Yeah.
It's that came out this year,
Yeah.
last year. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta
Yeah.
just Christmas. I
Whoa.
just gotta. I like to treat myself to a novel every Christmas break. I like to sit down, just you know, lose myself in a novel for the you
Yeah.
know, switch the phone off, and it was great. First of all, I was delighted that characters that you had created from like Miracle Monday and Last Son, like BJ, reappear, and we get to learn more about
Yeah.
their backstory and characterization. That I was delighted with. I was also so excited when you announced this because I was curious would you how would Last Son or Miracle Monday how would that have read if it was set in a modern context? You know, a world of smartphones and your approach to that. And the idea is the way you write Lex, he again, he is a villain. He does do illegal stuff to an extent, but he's also more complicated. The opening to LexCorp was far more touching and emotionally charged than I expected, where Lex is just about to give up. He just cannot find his
Yeah,
place in this world. That was something that empathy with the character. As you were saying, you could tell this is a character you feel a great deal about the connection with, because someone doesn't write that for the mustache twirling villain to go up against the
right.
hero of the story. And you mentioned as well, like,
Superman doesn't appear in LexCorp. It doesn't. He doesn't appear in the book.
nope, nope, not
Um,
not at all. There's no Clark, Lois,
yeah,
or Superman. There's no recognizable cast. It's as I mentioned, BJ you had created is a character. LexCorp
yeah,
you had also created, and LexCorp, it's interesting because it has also been used. I usually mentioned like in the reboots in the comics, it's been used. It's also appeared in other media, like film, TV, and
yeah,
such and all.
yeah. It's showing up everywhere.
Yeah,
Um, I wish they put a credit on all the movies it showed up on. Uh,
yeah.
but
We
they
were
don't.
we were
They haven't.
speaking with Paul Kupperberg a few weeks back. We had a conversation where, and James Gunn has been very kind in giving credit, but Paul was very candid in explaining, yeah, but there's no monetary real connection to it, or as much as could be to what they generate. It
Did I
is.
ask for money? I just I keep telling people I'd rather be read than paid. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
it's
okay. It's not about that.
it's
Um,
with
yeah,
with the Snyder films. It was, I think, Batman, Superman. They actually name Must There Be a Superman? They name dropped in as well. So, did you get any recognition within that film, like within the credits or acknowledgement? No,
yeah, nothing,
that's
nothing.
incredible. That's incredible because
Yeah.
it's surprising. Because obviously, for that to be dropped, they did it with reason. So someone must have researched it. The fact that it doesn't,
Well, of course, yeah, clearly.
yeah.
At some point, I saw them. Which one was it? It was yeah, Batman versus Superman
Mhm.
with Laura Siegel Larson, Laura Carter, who Jerry Siegel's daughter, friend
Okay,
of mine,
okay.
and just happened to go with her. I guess it was the Directors Guild, and we're sitting there, and she's got her history with Superman, and I got my history with Superman, and it out of nowhere, and not convergent at all. But at some point, who was the guy, the talk show host who got canceled not long after the movie came out? Charlie Rose. At some point, he looks into the camera in the middle of an interview and says in a very stentorian voice, he says, "Must there be a Superman?" And Laura looks at me and says, "Are you okay?" I don't know, Laura. Are you?
Oh man,
um, I don't know.
what what would
So they
you?
keep coming up with stuff that's evocative of stuff I did, but um, I'm looking for my name at the end of the credits, but no, it doesn't show up.
I I have a lot of faith with Mr. Gunn's current take on what he plans to do with DC Studios as a whole and Superman, because he did arrange for several creators, comic creators, to come visit the set. He seems to acknowledge certain key dates of characters who appear in it, and he does seem like an enthusiastic fan. So perhaps that kind of energy within the studio, he might. I'm sure if something I don't know, I above my pay grade,
I
as they
know.
say. But who knows? What's your connection then with these characters and the franchises, as it were? Like, are you going to go see the new Superman film when it comes out? Are
Oh,
you?
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
And
Um,
what type of legacy would you like to see with yourself with the character? Obviously, people are still reading your stories, still collecting the
yeah.
comics, still there. So, um, is it what?
Well,
What
these
would?
guys are. I don't know that people are going back in the archives just for fun, but these guys are doing their research. They are clearly. Um, I got Alexa talking to me. Sorry.
I know it is. Would you, if the opportunity arose to work again with DC, would you explore such an opportunity, or would it come? Because I know other creators, Rob Liefeld has a podcast, the creator behind Deadpool, Rob's Evasions, and he was saying he arranged a contract back in the day where he has participation, so he forever owns a piece of Deadpool and such whenever they use it. If an opportunity came up to work with DC again in a project, would you seize it, or would you seize it with something like that where you would like to see yourself, owning
Yeah, I
what you
mean,
create for them?
it would have to be a different deal. I'm a grown up now.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in writing stuff somebody else owns.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob is a bright guy. He knows how to do that stuff. Um,
I,
yeah,
I,
it'd involve years worth of negotiation. I don't think they've got the time. I do. I'm hanging around a long time, but
I get you.
my
Yeah.
mom, I just lost my mom. She was 96. So
Oh,
I think I got a
that's
while.
oh, well, it'd be great to see something again. Like who knows the future may hold on to, I suppose. It all just depends, I find, on who the editors are, who the powers that be are. It's usually their interests that drive the direction of these companies. Coming back to LexCorp, when you were visiting, so what was it like? Stepping back into the prose format after all this time, because I found it's a very relevant text for the world we're in now. There's a lot that's said from a political, technological, ecological point of view that comes across, and it comes across brilliantly.
Yeah.
People might pick this up thinking it's going to be, a real kind of knock and sock 'em, superhero thriller, but has its action elements, but as I mentioned, a lot of emotion, some great drama stakes at key points in it as well. But
Tell
just the
everybody then. Tell
idea.
everybody. I just want
Absolutely.
everybody to read it.
It is, yeah. And how can they get to it then? So at the moment, where will LexCorp be available for people to purchase?
It's on Amazon. It's on all the online shops. It's on Amazon. It's on Libris, Barnes and Noble. Um,
Yeah,
I haven't really gone out of my way to try to distribute it in stores.
yeah,
Um, I keep putting off concentrating. And I it's like I said, I sit in a room and I make stuff up. And I'm really not very good at marketing or raising money. I ran for Congress once. I couldn't fundraise to beat the band. Um,
it's.
but I just I just sit in a room and write stuff. Um,
What was it like
I've got
revisiting?
one friend at DC.
Okay.
I told him if anybody at DC needs to get in touch with me, they call you. Um, somebody I gave work 2 years ago, who's now a
Mhm.
vice president. Well, great. You know, you want to talk to Elliot? Call this guy.
And what was it like going back to Lex after all this time? Going back to the characters, did you take was it a different approach, or was it like a familiar catching up with an old friend?
Yeah, it was an old friend, and I tried to synthesize all the versions of.
Hmm.
Uh, it alludes to his having been, a costume villain and a guy who wore prison scrubs all the time,
Hmm.
but now he's a captain of industry. Um, and he talks about in the book, he talks about all the invisible men in his life, and he talks about the different versions of himself. He
Yeah.
alludes to the different versions of himself.
Yeah.
He says the one of them, the version of Lex that was happiest was the guy in the prison scrubs, the guy in the gray prison outfit that used to break out of jail using bizarre devices and get put back in by Superman.
Yeah.
He refers to him as the alien.
Yeah, that's it. The alien
Lex
is.
refers to the alien. He's referring to whatever the character who doesn't appear in the book.
Yeah. It's a brilliant intake to it because even ideas of like when you say the Invisible Man, you really even found a great way to address the LexCorp kind of version where he's on the planet as the king. Like that's such a good
Yeah,
concept, and
he became king of a planet in another solar system.
yeah,
Uh,
it's such a good idea. It's like he is the very definition of the unreliable narrator as well, because it's
yeah,
obviously from his. That's what is very interesting with LexCorp is it's from first person
doesn't
point of
he say
view.
that at some point? Doesn't he say I'm an unreliable narrator?
I believe so. I know that was if I think definitely does because I know he does say the one thing that Lex will do is he's unreliable. He will never if he says he's going to do something. This is sort of a trait you gave him. If he says something to you, he's not lying. So he says, "Don't trust me." Don't
Yeah,
trust him.
right,
That was such a
right.
good idea. He's like because
He's
he's
not
not.
so much a villain as somebody who's not bound by human norms.
Yes,
He
that's
doesn't
exactly.
need he doesn't need a constitution. He doesn't need laws. He has no use for
Yep.
them. He's not so much a bad guy as a guy who's dissociated and above the rest of us, essentially.
Yeah. He's just that piece in the jigsaw that just does not fit. Like he's just from a different box altogether.
Yeah, yeah,
It makes for a very compelling reading. And speaking of making things up, your podcast, your excellent podcast where you adapted about Last Son and Miracle Monday, Elliot makes stuff up. Do you have any plans to perhaps bring that back in the near future or to revisit?
yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah.
My sister keeps bothering me to do an audio version of Not My Closet.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I really would like to do LexCorp on that format, and I just haven't that time. Um, you know what it was like to get in touch with me. I mean, I get emails, I get phone calls, but I just don't get back to people very well.
I understand. No, if that happens, it'd be great because your approach to podcasting was really interesting. You released it in a serialized form, a chapter, but it wasn't just, well, here's a chapter. You also had some commentary. You had, perhaps talking
Yeah,
about like where events leading up to when you were writing this chapter or something might have just dawned on you. Yeah, it was really
yeah. I
good.
had a, you know, the only person I interviewed on there, the only person other than me who appeared on in that thing was my friend Tommy Duffy,
Yeah.
who had been a character in an old Robin story 50 years ago. Um, and yeah, he was a great friend. He was I just lost him a few months ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, me too. um, but he was a guy I knew when I was 18, 19 years old. He was 12, 13 years old. I used to I used to be part of a tutoring program when I was in college,
Mhm.
and he was the kid I tutored for 4 years. Um, and then he joined the Navy and he built a business and he sold the business and bought a farm. He had a great life. Um,
Brilliant.
I'm just sorry it's over so soon. And you know, people do that. People leave. It's weird. I don't like it. Don't like it even a little.
Yeah. As I suppose though, in regards to your career, you're leaving behind a legacy which is unlike
I'm not
what
leaving it
most of us
behind.
have.
I'm still here.
Is it-
You know what occurred to me a few days ago? It occurred to me I'm about the age that Will Eisner was when we started to treat him like he was going to die soon, and he lived for a long time after.
Don't
Um,
worry, don't worry. I'm
yeah,
not.
every time.
I'm talking far-flung future, decades,
Yeah,
centuries.
yeah.
But it's just you're going to be forever associated with like the very definitive, American myth, the because like I often teach in some of the stuff that I classes, lectures, we actually take up Action Comics #1, and we look at it, and I explain to my students in America, like here in Ireland, we can go back to ancient Celtic mythology, the Red Branch Knights,
Hmm.
Cuchulainn, so many stories. In America, it's
Oh
different
yeah,
because
there you go.
exactly, yeah. And then in America, you have the likes of, yes, there's Native Americans who have such rich history, but then everyone, white America essentially, the plantators, the immigrants, the people from far off lands, so they build a culture. So by the 20th century, like there wasn't really the American myth, but then the superhero, particularly Superman, seems to have been the answer to that. Like America did what America does they build it, they manufacture it, and they made Superman the myth, the story. And
Yeah.
like you have, what's it like for you? Do you ever like take a step back and go, wow, like this is like I'm this icon is here, you know, now and forever. It's one that's probably going to be one of these eternal. It's probably this, you know, centuries Hercules, but you're always going to have that contribution with it. Is that ever any thoughts or reflections on that when you're
Yeah,
working with the character? Yep.
I think about that all the time. I mean, I even thought about it when I was writing the thing. I'm sure Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster didn't think of that. They were
Hmm.
just making something up to make a living.
Hmm.
Um, they realized later on that that they had become iconic somehow. But yeah, yeah, I think about the connection to classical mythology all the time. And it's like I said, humans receive information in one way. It's in the form of a story.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, well, I just want to thank you so much again for taking this time out. It's again been a great privilege to have this opportunity to speak and interview you. I've, you know, been a huge fan of your work, and it's I'm really delighted for the opportunity.
Hey,
Before we wrap up, do you have any projects, upcoming projects, anything you want to promote, anything at all that if people want to find out more? Like, so you mentioned LexCorp is available on Amazon wherever you can get books online. That's how I ordered
yeah,
mine as well. It seems to be they print it on demand, send it out. It's great. It arrives here on your doorstep. Is there anything else you would invite people to? You have Caveat Corner Books as your imprint, is it?
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, that's where I wanted to print out my friend's poetry, but she didn't bite. Uh,
Hopefully in
yeah,
the future.
I remember Isaac Asimov saying he had this big table in his basement, um, and he had three typewriters around the table. And when he got dry on one project, he'd go to another typewriter and continue on another project. So for a while, I was writing 4 books at a time, um, because you got room on your hard drive for more than three. But um, my friend Ken said, Ken Penders, he said, you gotta finish that Luther book. So I did. I set aside everything else. Now I'm working on 2 more. I'm
Brilliant.
doing that autobiography, and I got a time travel trilogy I'm working on.
Oh, great. Oh, I'm really excited for the time travel one. Sounds the reason that stands out to me there is because in LexCorp there's a touch of you know, experiencing a time travel aspect when he goes up into space with the
Yeah,
wormhole,
well,
and really, really,
yeah, he goes in a wormhole, and we're 4-dimensional creatures living in an 11-dimensional universe. So clearly, there's other stuff right here, wherever here is.
Mhm.
Um, so Lex goes in this wormhole, and dimensions keep shifting on him. He's aware of 4 dimensions at a time, but he doesn't know what dimensions he's working in. So at some point, he time travels because time is a dimension, just like length, width, and breadth. Um, he has to do calculations to figure out how to get back to the time he wants to be in, which he almost does. I mean, he gets back 3 days early, so he has to camp out in a movie theater for a few days and eat hot dogs.
I liked how he paid for rent as well. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I tell you, the LexCorp is a lot of fun. I totally enjoyed it. It was, and for those listening, if you read Last Son of Krypton, Miracle Monday, the Kingdom Come adaptation, An Enemy's Gift, all of these, LexCorp is right up there. It's great piece.
Show him
And
again. Show him again.
show,
Hold
show
up the book because I don't have a copy here.
they should get out. We
That's the
have
book.
that's it. It's excellent. And who did the cover again onto it? It's a
That
nice.
was a that was an AI drawing.
Oh yeah.
Um, I did about a dozen versions, and it got more and more sophisticated, and eventually I got the illustration I wanted. Um, You know, when I wrote Last Son of Krypton, I don't think I talked to anybody who had read it for 8 years. I think the first person I hung out with who had anything to say about it was Mark Waid, and I knew people were reading it because it sold 450,000 copies, for heaven's sakes. But I think it was all to people I didn't know, kids mostly, and then they grew up and had lunch with me, like Mark. This is 8 years after I wrote it. I had this vision. I used to take the subway to work all the time, and invariably, a bunch of girls would come in. Girls, I'm talking young women on their way to work, and they'd be lined up across from me reading the same book. The Thornbirds was a big one, a bunch of others, and I had these notions that I'd be sitting in the subway and have all these women sitting across from me reading my book. Never happened, because I didn't write for them. I didn't write for 19-year-old secretaries and with long legs. But it took a while for people to be able to talk to people who actually read the thing. So thank you.
No,
You've read any of them.
no, thank you. It's such a good story. Like that's what it is. It's such a compelling story, and often like the time Last Son would have come out as well. People we look at an animation, something called the age ghetto, which is animation was considered just for kids, and same extension comic books. If you go to the East to Japan, they never really had as much of a stigma, of course, because look what
Right.
happened post-war. They just saw it as entertainment, escapism, a
Well, have you
form.
seen the Spider-Verse movies? Those are
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. Yeah,
I'm waiting for the third one. I just started watching the second one for the fourth or fifth time yesterday.
it's
That's grown-up
it's
animation.
exactly, yeah, and it's just like
Great stuff.
what you were producing, Stan with Last, and that was it. That's just showing what could be done with a lot of people when they talk about your novels and your stories and your books and your comics. They often try to equate it as that you're writing it as like more of a mature adult version. I said, no, I don't think it's that. I think you just told compelling stories. It's like that's what it was. You never talk down to your readers, is what I think is why your stories are going to be always among the top there. You just always put story first. It's been a privilege here to talk to you today and now learn a bit about how you privilege the structure in your writing, your reflections and what you were thinking and writing some of these stories. And I'm excited to hear that there's more stories, more books coming out in the future. I'll definitely be there at the top of the order list. To check
I don't
them
know
out.
if they're coming out, but I know they're getting written, so we'll see.
I'll keep bothering you to make sure you're staying
Thank you.
on track. Thanks
This
so
was a lot of
much.
fun.
Thank you so much, and hopefully we talk again some point. All the best.